Hey, how did you like that cake I baked you? It was dry. In the down deep, we don't lie about cake.
Welcome to The Cleaning, a podcast about Apple TV Plus's show Silo, now on season 2. My name is Catfish, and with me, as always, is someone who hates toys. It's Bubba.
Catfish, we are here. It has not been 2 years. This show actually premiered in 2023, and then it returns for season 2 in 2024. What is this crazy thing about TV shows coming up every year? This is incredible.
But are you sure it hasn't been like, okay, sure, it's been from 23 to 24, but how many months has it been, Bubba? When did it come out in 2023?
Let's not look at that, because then...
Okay, all right, okay.
Then we'll know it's been more than a year. Catfish, we're going to be breaking down season 2, episode 1, The Engineer. Juliette's fate seems sealed when certain truths finally come to light. This is very exciting. We're going to spoil all of season 1 and the first episode of season 2. Do you want to give your rating first, or do you want me, the harshest critic, to give my rating first?
Bubba, you go first. I feel like you should lead this podcast with your brilliance and equanimity.
For this first episode of season 2, The Engineer, I'm going to give it 8. That's right, 8 triple R's out of 10.
Triple R's?
Yeah, that's rut-row revolution. When you start a revolution and then you rut-row when you go outside. Holy smokes, what a scene outside that silo. The new silo, I'm like, new silo, who dis? It was really tense. It because it has been away, it feels like a year and a half. It's really kind of bringing us into exactly what Juliette is going through. Maybe not 100% what Juliette is going into, but pretty darn close. I thought 8 out of 10. This is tense. This is new worlds we're experiencing. So I was really excited. Listeners, I want you to know that I'm going to bring out the nits. These nits must be picked. But once again, 8 out of 10, I really liked it. So what is probably the biggest nit to pick? We only got one episode. So for this 1 week, November 15th, 2024, we have one episode, kind of a slow, kind of methodical episode. Good episode, but only one. And so that's kind of the thing that brings the episode down is you want to continue. You're like, we're ready for this story to hit hyperdrive. And that's where my book reader bias comes in. One of the reasons why I loved this first book in the trilogy, Wolf, I loved it because it had no fat. It was a lean, mean, page-turning machine. This book is a rush to the end, and as a reader, you want to rush to the end. Now, in this show, the season 1 of the show, and now even this first episode of season 2, we've got a whole lot of table setting. Again, I didn't mind it in this episode, but there's a part of me where it's like, we want, if you're a fan of the book, you want it adapted to give you that feeling. This episode covered about 27 pages of this book, but those 27 pages still felt like they moved quickly. Sometimes this moved a little bit methodically. And so part of me, that's the only reason why I didn't go 10 out of 10. 8 out of 10, great, tense. We're discovering new things. People love discovering new things. 8 out of 10 for me. The 2 points didn't get there because I wanted a bit more pulse, which I feel like is in the book. That's my rating, Catfish. What is your rating for episode 1, The Engineer?
Before I do that, let me just I want to respond to some of the things you said. First of all, I noted a couple things you said. You said that felt a little hyperbolic. One, you said we're experiencing new worlds. And we're just experiencing another silo.
Yeah, we are.
And then when you said we were waiting for this episode to hit hyperdrive, I almost did a spit take, even though I'm not drinking anything. Hit hyperdrive, Bubba.
Yes.
This was our issue with some of the episodes last season, and it's unfortunate that we have it with this season. I know that Apple seems to have an endless amount of money to spend on shows.
So much money.
And so much money. My concern is these people are thinking, oh, we're just going to just keep taking all that sweet Apple money, and we've got a plan to make this like a 7-year show, 8-year show. We're just going to get all that money. Streaming is kind of new on Apple, but if you look at the shows on streaming anywhere that have lasted 5 seasons, these are shows that are like, phenomenons. They're almost like old school water cooler phenomenons, right? We had the first one they had, House of Cards, that really
you're
put
talking about Netflix on the map. But yeah, sure.
I'm talking about Well, I mean, but Apple's not been around long enough to say like, okay, 5 years, good. Stranger Things has lasted more than 5 years. The Crown lasted that amount of time only probably because they've covered the different eras. And so maybe Apple is different, but I get anxious thinking they're like, we're going to take all this money, and at a certain point, Apple's going to say, we're just going to stop this series, and we are going to get the full story we want, and we'll be going back thinking about these episodes where they did a lot of puttering around. So because of that, I gave this episode 7 double J's out of 10 only.
Double J's?
Yes, double J's, as we all know, is Juliette jealousy, because right now I wish I was Juliette, just wandering around in a new world. She only has one crazy person to deal with. There's so much craziness in the world right now. She's going to deal with that one loon. Now, look, did I enjoy Silo Ninja Warrior? I did enjoy Silo Ninja Warrior.
Good, okay.
I did enjoy that. It's like, do this, do that, do that. My only concern is, again, you're right. Maybe if we got in a couple episodes at once, it wouldn't bother me. But like, I just worry that we're just going to be slow rolled to death here, and then we won't get the full story.
Ooh, well, I'm a pretty positive 8 out of 10. You're kind of a sour 7 out of 10.
Yeah, that's
Boy,
me.
These rankings, right? These rankings, huge, vast in that one point. But we love to say, who cares what we think here on the Cleaning Podcast? We want to know what you think.
That's
you
true.
Guys are the lifeblood of this. You give us discussion. So we are going to break down the episodes. We're going to do the things we always do every podcast. We're going to have our judicial debates where we take some big ideas either in the episode or the episode inspires and debate them and disagree and come at it with all sides. We're going to ask the question we ask always, where is it better? In the silo or in our current modern world? We're going to have Matt Murdick's musical analysis. We're going to get to your wonderful feedback. And hey, it's one episode. We've already got some great feedback.
I love it.
And Catfish, we are also going to answer your questions. So
yes,
Catfish. And we're going to have spoilers. We're going to have a spoiler section at the end of this, and we'll get to that in a bit. But once again, how can you tell us if you're watching this on YouTube? And thousands of you so far have watched this on YouTube. You know what we love? We love your comments and your thoughts. If you're listening to this on audio podcast, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, hey, go to our social media apps. We're at Double PHQ on Blue Sky, woohoo, on Threads, woohoo, on Twitter.
Yeah.
And Instagram and Facebook. Tell us your thoughts. We want to know. That's at Double PHQ. The word double, the single letter P for podcast, HQ for headquarters. Your feedback, we go through and read it every week when we break down these shows. And it's because you are the third member of this podcast trio. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. We love the feedback. Also, we need you to make us laugh. That's it. We ask for, we like incisive feedback. We also really like feedback that's funny. And then if you can do funny and incisive, then you can take over as for me on the podcast.
We'll tap in and tap out. Right, exactly. Catfish, it is time to dive into this episode. Let's
do it.
It has kind of 3 main focused areas. We've got the past rebellion, which ends up with your flags out and your guts and skeleton out. We've got the present timeline of this new silo that Juliette does her, as you said, Silo Ninja Warrior skills in. And if we've got a flashback to Julio in the original silo as we kind of see her become the engineer who could solve her way out of some of the problems she gets to up in this episode. So what do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about the rebellion in the Silo 2 here, the present timeline of Juliette in the new Silo, or Juliette's flashbacks? What do you want to talk about first?
Well, Bubba, I think what I would like to do is cover things chronologically. If I was going to do it by order in which I enjoyed things, it would be different. But let's cover the rebellion, the Juliette's flashback, and then Juliette's present.
We're in this other silo, the next door silo, and a boy named Timmy, he's running with a torch through the dark. And he comes up to a blockade, and he's like, I've got a message for my dad. Boy, no, we don't take messages here. It's for my father. All right, kid, come on. The note that the father reads is not good. The generator will flood in 15 minutes. And if you remember season 1, episode 2, those generators, tray important. So, oh boy, 15 minutes. So it's almost like, hey, are we going to attack? Are we not going to attack? Oh boy, we're screwed. We got no choice. We got to attack. The dad is a sheriff or a deputy. He's got a badge. And at 5 bells, Catfish, 5 bells. You ready?
Yeah. Shame. 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 Shame.
All right, so they attack and they're yelling for freedom. They want freedom from their lungs breathing in oxygen. So they give them this. They planned pretty smart. The bridge out to IT is been wiped out, yet they're bringing their own bridge. This is like a medieval castle assault, and they're yelling for freedom, and they're attacking people who have much better weapons than they do. They're attacking people with guns, but they're like, we got a body count, we can overwhelm them. What did you think of this fight? Do you naturally love a rebellion and join in with the sides of the rebels, or did you feel like the people with the guns, did you side with them? What did you think?
I mean, there was a certain point when I was like, why can't we have CGI Luke here? Let's do this.
He uses the force to pull the people across the bridge.
Yes. You know what? It's funny. I'm listening to a podcast called Behind the Bastards, and they're doing a multi-episode arc on Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh, wow.
Who they claim was the person who sort of invented sort of modern guerrilla warfare.
Right. Okay.
And they talked about how, Americans with our history, we naturally kind of root for rebels.
We do.
So yes, I'm pro rebel side. So I guess that would be small r.
All righty. So the rebels end up winning, but they are questioning themselves. They're like, why didn't he open the door? Was the Bernard of our silo, this guy named Russell, was he lying? At the end, it feels like almost a bit like, well, the generator's about to flood. We're SOL either way. It's like, okay, guys, this is it. We're going to go outside. And they're carrying a flag, man. This is the battle. This is what you want. Freedom. We're going to lead us from oppression, and we're going to go to freedom. And then a smash cut. And I mean, we'll talk about it in the end. But the number of bodies out there decomposed, youch. That is... hashtag a tough way for a rebellion to go down. They got the freedom they wanted in it. Certainly, well, they got the freedom. They wanted freedom. They got freedom, but they didn't want the horrific things that happened to them with the freedom. So what are your thoughts? I mean, this is
like
cool.
the famous song says, freedom's just another word for dying in the dust.
Freedom's just another word for rotting in the dirt.
There you go.
Oh my God, how brutal. Did you like this? I think this was a great way to start the season. Once again, I went 8 out of 10. You went way down to 7 out of 10. Did you like this opening little prologue?
Absolutely. I'm all in to get more backstory on this, the way the world was. And it doesn't, and even more out of the silo. I mean, I think, funnily enough, maybe because it's got more viewers, but maybe because it did this very thing, Fallout on Amazon was, I felt like, a huge hit because it took this same kind of idea but gave us a whole world.
Wow.
Instead of just this one kind of location.
Well, interesting. We'll talk about that later, because I think this comparison to Fallout is brilliant. Listeners, we talk a lot, we debate a lot, we joke a lot. Once again, we want you to join in with us. If you're on YouTube, go down there in the comments. Tell us how terrible our jokes are, our takes are. Write to us on social media, every social media platform at PPHQ. All right, so let's jump to these flashbacks, and I will agree with you. I believe you were hinting at it. It's not that I didn't like the flashbacks, but it didn't really, to me, give us too much information other than, okay, how did Juliette, this girl who was the daughter of a couple doctors, right? How did she become so smart at putting things together? Well, she kind of started young and became a engineer on her own.
Just sort of this section here, Bubba, I would like to see more of the past from other silos, from the silo that we're in right now. I don't know how much more story juice we're going to get by investigating Juliette's past more. I felt like we got enough of that last year. So take this time and give us more of something else is what I think.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say something, listeners, that I don't know for sure. But if you look at a lot of preseason reviews for season 2, meaning journalists and critics who got access to the first 9 episodes ahead of time, they say these flashbacks are kind of going to be a thing. Now, like you, I'm not sure this flashback taught us anything we didn't know. Like, even if we didn't see this flashback, we know Juliette worked in mechanical. She fixed the generator last season. We know she's smart. Maybe this once again reinforces her tie to the people in the Down Deep, like Shirley and like Walker. I'm not sure we needed it. And hopefully, listeners, you feel it's okay to say a flashback like this is not really any part of this book. You don't need it to reach the end point. And some of the critics who saw these first 9 episodes of season 2, they imply that maybe these flashbacks are just kind of like this one, kind of a nice little, I guess, a little break from the action.
Again, it doesn't give us
much
any
insight.
Yeah, it's not giving us any insight or information that we need so far. So it's really not helping.
We see her connect with Shirley, her good friend, and apparently Shirley's parents, including Bernard, who work at this recycling center. It is giving us an idea of how do
Barney.
they...
No.
Barney, right, sorry.
Not
right,
Bernard. That'd
Barney
be great
down
to
in
see him down there. If they had just like a day where they were doing like once a year they do job
work
exchange.
swap. Yeah,
work swap, just so everybody knows. Bernard down there picking
Barney's
shit up.
down there. So we see Walker, and this is the first thing that really jumps out of me. A couple of things. It's Walker tells Juliette, "In here, you work for me in the silo, but mainly me." Ooh, that's a tough boss you got right there. And then Juliette is talking about, well, after my mother died, and Walker, oh my God, is this good therapy? Maybe we should debate this. Walker, don't you mean after your mom killed herself? She is ice cold. She's like, listen, I got sick. I had a dream where I was all alone. And that dream told me that if a little girl ever wants some comforting, I won't give her any. Your mom killed herself. Walker, ice cold. What are you doing?
Yeah, maybe your dream that you're all alone had something to do with how you don't sugarcoat anything.
Hey, how did you like that cake I baked you? It was dry. In the Down Deep, we don't lie about cake.
It would be nice if someone ever said, did you ever have your dream where you were nice to people and so people did like you?
Listen to me. Hey, good morning, Shirley. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just morning. Here in the Down Deep, we say it like it is. Oh, my goodness gracious. Shocking that she lives by herself there. Old
like, it's 10:15. It's mid-morning at best.
All right. So once again, Juliette's pretty smart. Walker knows this is a smart girl. Walker is giving her big projects to fix. If you lived in a silo with limited resources, why wouldn't you tell somebody, hey, fix everything, including a toy? I mean, we're going to be down here hundreds of more years. There are going to be more kids who want this toy. Juliette fixes it. She tries to give it to Shirley, and Shirley's like, no, what do you do? Recycle it. We recycle it. It's broken. Just accept it and move on.
No. Don't tell me how to live my life, Silo. I'm not going to just accept things and move on.
Listen, it's broken. You mean this broken toy? That's how we deal it down in the Down Deep.
Shit.
And so we see Shirley and Juliette go exploring, and this reinforces some of the things that maybe help with the episode later. We go down to where the machine which dug the silo was left. We see the water at the bottom of our original silo that prepares us for, hey, these silos can have water in the bottom. They can flood. You probably, you go that deep, groundwater is going to get in no matter how, especially if a silo's around for hundreds of years. And that prepares us to move to Juliette's new silo. What do you think of this, Catfish? Let's talk about it right at the top before we go through her story. If you're Juliette, everybody kind of hated you. Your boyfriend George is dead. is it good for you to go explore a new silo? Are you happy if you're Juliette to get out of that old silo and go to this one? Yes, you won't see your friends like Walker and Shirley, but hey,
That is a great question. I guess. I mean, I know one thing. She's living Walker's dream.
Right. Walker's like, oh, I'll never be bothered at all in this new silo until the very end. So let's get to it. What I thought was great, 10 out of 10, is Juliette coming across these bodies, these corpses outside the new silo. Thousands of bodies. Horrific. And then I'm not sure the show did a great explanation of, well, why is she doing this? Why is she going towards all these dead bodies? Why is she going in there? But when she slipped and fell and she's in there stepping over all those dead bodies, I thought that was great. I thought that was tense. Incredible.
She is not welcome at her original silo. She has got to find someplace else to go. So that's her thing. As we know from last season, the only reason she's made it this far is because she's got the good tape.
Hell yeah, the great heat tape. So the kind of giant outer gate of this new silo is open. The kind of second door, there are 3 doors you have to go through to get into the silo. The second door is also kind of open. It's cracked open a bit because it's like a body died in this door as it probably was crushing and closing. And so that's horrific. Do you, Catfish? I looked on Reddit. So did you realize, well, why is Juliette just going in this silo? Did you realize that it was because she knew, and this comes from the book. So if you didn't know this, if you couldn't read this into the show, it comes from the book. She didn't have much oxygen. She had to go somewhere. You're not going to be able to live in this suit forever. So she's like, here's a silo. I got to get in somewhere where there's air. Hopefully this has air, and that's why she went in this way.
I thought that was obvious only in that I felt like we saw in season 1 there were people that did not take off their helmet that did not make it very far. Right. Letting me know that the only reason she's able to survive this long is because of the tape. So yeah, she needs oxygen. So
she gets in the second door, is able to close it, but then somehow she's got to get in the third door. Once again, you got to get through 3 doors from outside into the silo. So she got through the big gate with the teeth, then she got in the second door. Now she's got to force it open, and somehow with a crowbar. This probably makes sense. Those doors really probably weren't ever intended for somebody on the outside to open them, but that means they may not have so much protection from the outside, where she finds this giant pipe, this giant crowbar, and is able to pry the door open and get through the third door. What did you think about that?
I mean, I disagree. I think the whole idea is you also want to be safe from outside invaders, but I'm just going to let that go.
Okay. Outside invaders.
Then it was so easy for her to get in. I'm going to let that. I've got to let that go because I'm just about to have a problem that I'm not going to give up on. So I'm going to let that one go.
All right. Sure thing. So a big, oh snap, oh no, we're in trouble moment is when she realizes, okay, I have better heat tape. It's kept me okay for a bit, but it is starting to peel off. To me, that was like, oh snap, I'm in deep trouble. And then Catfish, could you tell, was her acting enough to let you know, hey, I'm running short of oxygen. I got to get this helmet off come hell or high water. Could you tell that she wasn't able to breathe? And so she needed, she wasn't getting oxygen. And so that's why she started smashing her helmet.
Oh yeah. If you want to get technical, you'd have to wonder why the oxygen would even last that long. Sure, right. She's got the tape out protecting outside. Yeah, why give her oxygen to last that long? Plus, she's doing very strenuous work.
Yeah, why even give her oxygen? Everybody you send out to clean, is going to die. Why waste oxygen on them? But she must have had some, and there is some tube from her helmet into this box on her back. So either way, okay. So she gets in. She probably is thinking, and once again, this is me, hopefully listeners, the show presented it clearly as opposed to me saying, well, this is what it is in the books. She knows, hey, I did open, these doors. I want to get as far down, maybe into the silo, away from those possible toxins as much as possible. She does a different thing in the books, but she thinks, well, I might have toxins off me. How do I wash it off? So she, in this case, pours coffee or some black liquid over her, trying to think, okay, I got to wash these toxins off the suit.
I mean, Bubba, I thought it's a good thing she didn't use Dunkin' coffee because, same toxins, Dunkin' coffee.
There goes our sponsorship. Yeah, thanks.
I've got a question. Yeah. I mean, Again, just a quick aside, this Behind the Bastards podcast, they make all kinds of jokes about sponsorship, and then they just play the sponsors. I think we should do the same thing. We'd take the money and then just make fun of them. But listen, Bubba, my question is, how is air? How is there air up here? You referred to it earlier. We've got a whole episode last year showing how much it takes to keep the silo going. And there's air. I mean, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the episode and are still watching and aren't going to be listening to us 10 minutes from now. But there's somebody still in here, but they're much further away. So you would think they would generate just air just for their space. And it's just hard to generate air for over here. So that's it. That's what I'm not going to give up on here. The fact that there's air.
I am, I like anybody. I had to take biology in high school and geography, a bunch of things in high school. So don't trees take in carbon and kind of let off oxygen? Don't trees do that? And aren't there trees in the silo? We saw trees in this silo, and they're still alive, right? So I don't know if if that number of trees could fill up this whole, 150 floor or however many floors of silo there is. But there's water, so we know water has oxygen in it. We know they're trees, so you tell me how many trees. Here we go. Tell me how many trees it takes to oxygenate a silo.
I would think a lot. And then again, the system seems like it would not be self-sustaining, or at least one person sustaining. But that's all right. Let's move off of that as well.
Okay, oxygen is, I just Googled, oxygen is produced and released by trees. That's why I like trees, people. I like oxygen.
No, I understand.
So Juliette goes into an apartment, and I was writing the notes. I'm like, boy, is this the same apartment she had when she was sheriff? It is. Is that mean there's a camera behind this mirror, just like the one in hers? I was like, is she going to smash the mirror? And then she did it. This is the show kind of reinforcing me, thanking me for paying attention. She does it. She runs through clothes. She rummages through somebody's closet. She's somebody's closet. Well, it might be. What if everybody has the same closet? What if she finds, okay, here's a sheriff's outfit in this? We are joking, but this is like a big, huge, she is effed. She is alone in an empty silo. You're right. What if there's not air? What if there's not food? Like, you're in deep doo. Okay, there obviously, we've seen that there is some air she can breathe. But
again, Bubba, there is air, right? Yeah. We've established that beyond a reasonable point, even if it's unreasonable. But so things shouldn't go so bad. So to me, it felt like looking around that things were more recently empty than, it's hard to tell how long ago this rebellion was.
Well, if it's just toxins in the air and they don't cause your body to decompose any quicker than just natural decomposition is, from the state of those skeletons outside, 20 years? how long does it take you to turn into a skeleton? I have no idea, but
I don't know. Out in the open air without any scavengers? We have not seen no animal life outside, right?
That's for sure.
Without scavengers,
right.
It feels like down to skeletons would take like 100 years.
Yeah, seriously.
Just into the open air, yeah.
The one thing I want to say, Catfish and listeners, and we are going to have a book section at the end where there may be some spoilers, but for right now, I think, Catfish, your questions are very smart about how is there oxygen there? How is there power there if the generator's been flooded? Because we can see the silo's been flooded. These questions, the show does want you to ask them. The series does want you to ask them. She first sees some lights on, and it is the farm level. The water system is dripping out some sort of water. The kind of UV lamps are still going somehow. My question to you, listeners, is when she went up to that, that kind of sprinkler system there, and it looked pretty rough. I was like, would you drink that water? And it's like, okay, maybe you don't have a choice, but would you want to drink that, Catfish? It'd be yuck.
Bubba, first of all, number one, I'm sure it is as good as the air down there. The other thing is she's drinking from like condensed water, right? That is dripping. It's not like she went up to a pool that is just sitting there and could have stagnated, right? So it's like, also she has no choice. So yes, I would.
Now she's going around and the silo just has noises. and she follows one of the noises and sound and lights to the bridge being down. Yeah. And it's the down bridge we saw in the flashback. And so we spent a whole lot of time of her, how am I going to cross this bridge? And this leads me to one of my infamous Silo rants. And this is a mini rant. But in season 1, Juliette hid from the authorities by sneaking down the garbage chute. Remember, the garbage chute has ladders in it, and she could climb from one level to another, just down the garbage chute. And so she's spending all this time to figure out how to jump this chasm. And to me, I was just so frustrated. I was like, why not use the ladder you used in the garbage chute to avoid Bernard and the evil people? I mean, oh, good grief, I was frustrated. Let's ignore that. Maybe for whatever reason, they didn't show her trying to use the ladder in the garbage chute. Fine. So she's got to come up with a way. Her first attempt is the swing across attempt. And did you, Catfish, was this tense? Say what you want to about this whole episode. Were you tense when it's like, hey, I got a great idea. I'll swing across this chasm to the other side? I was like, oh boy, it was tense. And it had a thrilling ending. Okay, so I keep saying how I felt. Thrilling ending where she fell and you're like, oh my God, nice knowing you, Juliette. Splashdown. So how did you feel on this part?
I thought this part was good. I mean, even though we're not moving the story forward, we've got some excitement going on.
Luckily, the silo has been flooded, and I don't know how far she fell, but she did fall into the ocean and somehow survived. She got a new jumpsuit. She's going through everybody's closet. It's spring. It's new wardrobe for Juliette week. And this time she's like, okay, how am I going to cross this? I'm going to build a bridge. This bridge, I put in the show notes, it would not pass OSHA standards. It would not push past anybody's standards. It might pass the new person in charge of our new cabinet person in charge of transportation here in
infrastructure,
States.
Whatever.
Right, yeah, but she crosses the bridge. She survives. She does all this to follow the noise, and this appears to be an IT.
First of all, how dare you trash our new Minister of Transportation, Greg Gutfeld?
Okay, we'll edit that out. So she does all this work. She goes to the source of the noise, and it's a random fan blowing and knocking this name tag back and forth across it. I thought, oh my goodness gracious, isn't that kind of the typical thing that would happen? You spend all this energy, you nearly kill yourself trying to get to this, and it's nothing. So she builds another bridge.
Let's do this.
This infrastructure, we're going to keep building bridges until we do it. This third bridge, it's a bit like the Three Little Pigs. First house, not so good. Second house, not so good. Third one works. So her swing didn't work. Her first bridge sucked. It's this third one that looks great. She's about to, go on her adventures when suddenly she hears Moon River. Mm-hmm. And let me say that this, I'm talking about what was effective. This must have been effective because the song Moon River has been stuck in my head for the last 12 hours since I watched this episode last night.
Love it.
She follows it in. And, she's going through these doors, and there's all sorts of graffiti written on the walls and on the doors. I noted that on the back of one of the doors she goes through, somebody's written, "My survivors, please help us." She's going deeper and deeper in till finally she finds a locked door. And that's where we meet the mystery man, the Desmond in the bunker in Lost. He says, "Good, you heard the music. I love that song." So one thing. You tried to open the door. I get it. You see a closed door. What's on the other side? I understand. The thing is, if you do that again, I'm going to kill you. That's our episode, Catfish. That's a great ending. Again, for this 1 week, it's going to be so frustrating for people because they can't hit next episode now. What did you think of it? How did you feel? Were you excited to get some company for Juliette?
I mean, yes, obviously we need some company for Juliette. I just don't know how one dude has survived. Seems like it's only one dude. How is this dude making it? And also how he's like, hey, there's a person here I've never seen before. My first thing is not to say, tell me your story, but keep your distance, pal.
Well, think about it. His first thing was probably cutting that rope, her swing. Like, she goes up and looks at the rope and looks like this wasn't just a normal break. It looks like it was cut. So yeah, this is a person of contradictions. He tried to kill her by cutting her rope while she was swinging on it. He is hiding from her. Yet at the same time, he's like, oh, let me play you one of my favorites. I made you a mixtape. let me play you Moon River. So this new character, obviously, we're going to spend some time meeting. And next week, spoiler, if you haven't watched the next week promo, we're going to visit the people in the original Silo. So Catfish, that is it. Any thoughts on this first episode of season 2?
No more additional thoughts. No one wants to hear me harp on silly stuff like air anymore.
Yeah, you have been wasting air for so much. We don't want to hear you anymore. How about this? Where, if a show, sometimes shows are really well written and the kind of the beginning and the end are similar, you would say Silo season 1 began kind of with somebody going outside, Allison, the character Allison, Holston's wife, going outside the silo and dying. And then the season 1 ends with Juliette going outside the silo, but she's going to live. So the beginning kind of ties into the end. Is there anything in this episode you think is really going to tie through in the final episode of season 2 and going to tie it all together? What do you think?
I don't, maybe every season is going to end up with her in a new silo.
That'd be great. Like, that'd be good. That'd be fun. Every silo, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Let's do this. Silo 19.
Listeners, we keep saying it. We want to hear your feedback at PHQ on all social media. On YouTube, go down there and give us a comment. Hey, Catfish, it is time.
Yep. Okay.
For a Silo judicial debate. This is our first judicial debate of the season. Now that we know the truth, that the outside world is terrible, it's full of toxins, you can't live outside the silo. The first debate is, does this mean justice for Bernard? Bernard is doing a lot of shady things. He didn't even appear in this episode, but as we see, he knows that there are other silos with other cameras hidden behind your mirrors in your private living spaces. Bernard is doing a lot of shady stuff, but is it for the right reasons? If you go outside, you're going to die because you can't live without a suit. And even in a suit, there's not enough oxygen to last too long. So does this, kind of once again, terrible scene we saw of the neighboring silo where people are like, you're lying to us, we want to go outside. Catfish, they wanted to overthrow the ruling class of deep state. They've wanted change. They got the freedom they wanted. And now if you look around their silo, it looks like a red state, like Alabama. So do you agree that Bernard was right?
Bubba, are you telling me that these people who revolted against the principles of the silo, the common good, they left the silo?
They said the pact, who cares about, they shredded the pact because they wanted to leave that silo.
That is dumb of them to leave the silo. They should have just stayed and voted in someone who was also against the principles of the silo. No, but seriously, okay, now look, this is tough. Like on the previously on, I was glad they showed where Juliette says to Bernard, like, people can handle the truth. And Bernard is like, oh, you silly, silly child. And I agree with him that, like, this is tough. But serious question, Bubba, I had to ask myself, is the truth of the situation worse than they've been led to believe? Like, what I'm trying to remember, it's been so long. What was the truth that she wanted to share with people that would have been so much worse than, well, we're pretty much stuck under here and maybe someday we'll be able to go back to the surface?
I think the only truth that they really can reveal is that we are being monitored. We are being, kind of lied to keep us docile and not wanting to question to go outside. We are being spied on. They got cameras, once again, in your private living spaces to make sure nobody has any idea of overthrowing and doing anything that might lead to those doors being open. So that's what's really being lied to. What's funny is the big truth of, hey, it's toxic outside, you go outside, you're going to die. That is a truth. But what's funny is nobody believes that. But it's possible they don't believe that because they can feel the slightly less damning lies of you are living in a state of observation. You're living in a state where the government knows everything you do. And so you don't have a freedom to be yourself, but you do have a freedom to not breathe toxic air. So,
well, that's the tricky thing, right? Because I think the reason why it's funny, because last season we talked a lot about the difference between the book and the show is the reveal in the show wasn't until the end of the first season that the outside being okay was a lie.
Right.
And in the book, they reveal that earlier. So it really kind of taints your feelings about Bernard in that first season, because the whole time you're thinking, oh my God, what they're hiding this horrible truth to keep people in. So if you step back from that, or if you'd not had that, we would say, okay, well, whatever Bernard is doing isn't that bad, because like, it's not like they're oppressing people. They're just trying to stop them from going outside where you can't live.
No, I completely agree. Bernard wants everybody to live. You know, he does want the people in the silo to live. He wants to live. But could the silo's government be along the lines of, well, you can't really do it. I'm gonna contradict myself. I'll go ahead and say it. If you want to test the outside, you have the freedom to do it at any time. And people do have the freedom to do it at any time. The trick, I guess, is that you really can't. Like, let's look at this little revolution we saw. They theoretically, the people, the sheriff and the workers, they took out the Bernard of their world. And even after they took him out, they were like, well, do you think he was lying? What if he was lying? And they're kind of like, well, at this point, it's too late. We've already, we've overthrown the government because we told everybody, hey, we're going to, the government's been lying to us and we're going to get out. And so it's horrific. Like, this silo probably, it's supposed to be 10,000 people, right? It probably needs how many to actually run and function? At least 8,000, you think? Like, to actually function, they probably do need all those human beings. And if you have, here in America, I was making election jokes, but we do have kind of a 50-50 split among our electorate. And so if you're in a silo of 10,000 people, you couldn't let 5,000 leave if they wanted to leave, because the silo wouldn't survive without 5,000 people. Boy, this is why Bernard is right.
Unless you go to the next silo and there only needs one person to keep the whole thing running.
Well, he keeps it running for him. Like, one person is not having to feed 5,000 other people. Theoretically, it's one person with some food and enough power for himself. There may be other people behind that door, of course.
And to generate air almost all the way up to the surface of the silo.
Call me crazy, but can't you, didn't we all just watch The Martian? That guy developed enough oxygen for himself. Why can't this guy? You're like,
in a very small, limited, contained space.
Right. No, it was a limited. Boy, we are spoiling The Martian now, so we're going to stop this discussion. But I'm saying he did it in The Martian. What do you guys think? Are you listeners, now that you know the truth, outside is toxic. Human beings can't survive outside unless they, number one, have a perfect suit. But then number two, certain conditions. Do you think this justifies what Bernard's doing? Would you want a Bernard to not kind of ruin your civil liberties and civil rights? But the good thing about him, the good thing in quotes, is that he's preventing any nutso in the silo from blowing the whole place up. So do you feel justice for Bernard, listeners? Write to us and let us know.
But let me ask you one more question that is a spoiler for the book, but not the plot at all.
Sure.
I want to know this kind of thing that we're talking about here, for the common good, and sort of like a person making decisions without letting everybody know about it and what's actually going on. Is this kind of deep philosophical, political thing part of the book, or do you think the series is sort of investigating it more than the book, same as the book? Less than the book? What do you, as far as like the series versus the book and this kind of like political thing or sociological thing?
What I would say, and hopefully listeners, I don't consider this a spoiler at all, but the book is told third person from perspective, though. So it's third person, but we're really kind of following Juliette and her thoughts. And we're going to talk about that when we break down the episode, why that's so important. We're following Walker and her thoughts, or we're following, Shirley later in the book and her thoughts, you know what I mean? And so what we never do really is follow somebody like Bernard and his thoughts. So I would say the book is never going to position Bernard as doing the right thing, because he is an antagonist to all those people. And so I don't want to say what happens later in the book if the other people realize, Bernard's desperation to keep order in the silo and make sure, it doesn't get open to the outside toxins and everybody dies. By this point in the book, that really hadn't come up yet. Let's say.
Okay.
That's all I'll say. I'm not going to say it never comes up.
I mean,
it does
again,
come up.
it's not a plot thing at all. It's just a question of whether.
Yeah, I don't even think the show
book
is really
investigating it.
Well, has the show done it? Or are we kind of putting our own morals on? Because I don't think the show has even really gone far into Bernard's moral dilemma. The show hasn't really gone into, oh, crap, if there's a rebellion, we're in deep doo.
Right. Well, maybe, again, it was that I just focused on last season's when they did on last year. And Bernard was like, you silly girl.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we can let the people know the truth and everything will be fine.
Well, how about this? Do you agree with Bernard's statement then? Like looking back now in his statement of, oh boy, I wish I had your naivety or faith in humanity. Like who do you agree with, having seen what you've seen in the show so far?
I mean, in general, I agree that that life seems very tenuous there and needs to be protected. I still remain kind of unconvinced by you that the truth of whatever's going on is much worse than the reality that people are dealing with, that they're stuck here if they want to live.
Yeah, that is the truth. And that's what they've been told. So what is your problem?
Right. Well, what I'm saying is, I don't know why Bernard has to hide what he needs to hide from them that would incite them to rebel.
Well, once again, what he's hiding is that I'm going to be big brother and make sure you follow the truth.
Yeah. Well,
you can't question the truth. How about that? Like, you can't question the truth. Like, let's really get into trouble. And this will maybe lead to our next little segment. Let's say that everybody in the world knows that global warming is a problem. And let's say anybody who really studied this knows that it's man-made chemicals in the air, man-made things are causing global warming. What if you lived in a world where you were monitored to make sure you didn't say things like, oh, car emissions don't do anything? Like you were monitored right now and they said, you can't say that at all. You can't type that out. You can't say that out loud. Like, what if it was that strict? In the end, what's funny is it might save our world from overheating and dying. But, that is a kind of civil liberty being trampled. So let's get to our next segment, Catfish.
All right, let's do it, Bubba. Let's do it. All right, our next section, as always, last year we covered, we have to talk about, just based solely on what's happening in the silo this episode, we decide every week, is life better in the silo than our present life, or is life in the silo worse than it is in our present life? Sure. And Bubba, last year, I don't know how this happened, but it seemed to me that the silo won a lot as far as last year being in the silo.
2023 was a fine year. It was a good year. The sun was shining.
It was a fine year. It was a fine year. So, Bubba, it is, as you mentioned, you mentioned the date. Might as well mention it for the people listening later, just so they know where we are. It's November 2024, and the United States has joined most of the rest of the world in choosing a populist burn-it-all-down leader who proposes pain for their enemies instead of solutions for all.
Yep, that's important.
His cabinet selections feel like he is actively trolling us. So obviously, it's worse than the silo because life there is too predictable, stable, and focused on the common good. Bubba, that's my decision. We've had a turnaround from last year. Life in the silo worse now than it is in the US.
The first time anybody has chosen to live in our current world than live in the silo, Catfish. This is completely crazy. There's just one thing why I have to agree with you. I'm going to choose to live in the real world. Thank you, November 2024.
Why wouldn't you want to live in the real world?
For another judicial debate.
Yes.
As we mentioned, the preview for the next episode, it shows that we're going to be spending time back with the people in the original silo. Do you want to go back? Are you interested in how they're doing after Juliette left? Or are you more interested in staying with Juliette and examining this new deserted silo? What says you, Lawyer Catfish?
Well, Bubba, we need people. I mean, one of our commenters practically said, it commented that the only thing that was missing from this episode was a volleyball that Juliette could use, a la Tom Hanks and Wilson. So we need people. If there's only going to be one loon in this silo that's somehow maintaining it by herself, we need to follow someone. And if we are not going to get more backstory on the outer world, which it seems like we're going to stay limited to the places we've been, we definitely want to have more backstory on the silo, on the original silo, and what's going on there. Now, with the caveat that I don't need any more establishing information, backstory on Juliette. But yes, more on the silo, the original OG silo, both past and present.
Yeah, we need to go there so we can really appreciate Bernard and the great work he's done for the community. That's what I say. I'll tie it back to our other judicial debate. I think we do need to check out on Silo 18. Is there going to be a rebellion there? We saw how this Silo's rebellion ended not too good. Catfish, I know that now that we've done this and we've talked for so long, you can't possibly have anything else you want to discuss.
Bubba, it doesn't matter how much we discuss. We always need the double D's, double K's.
Wait, double D's, double K's?
Yeah, the deeply dumb catfish questions.
Oh boy, here we go. Okay, what questions might you still have?
All right, Bubba, here are some questions you can feel free to answer as if they were serious questions, answer if they're ridiculous questions, or just do that thing where you look at me and you're like, how do I allow this dude to keep in my life? All right, number one.
Number one.
And it's funny, two of these questions are based on stuff maybe I didn't think about last year.
Sure.
So Juliette goes out in what I would call the technical term is like enviro suit, clean suit, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But it is not only a clean suit, it is a clean suit. This thing is pristine and it is beautiful. Yeah. So my question is, do they have enough of these clean suits? Just keep wasting them on cleaners? Or do they ask the occasional cleaner, look, after you clean the window, can you like put a hook in this other dead person so they can reel in a suit and recondition it? Because otherwise the outside would be, they'd run out of suits and the outside would be.
They'd run out of helmets. How are you going to have enough helmets? I mean, come on. Yes. The silo, think about this. So this is the question. There's not an answer to your question, Catfish, that I have, that the show has presented. But think about this. We know that it's been 140 years in our original silo since the last rebellion. Think how many people have gone out to clean in 140 years. Are you telling me that it's less than one a year? Because if it's one a year, you need 140 suits just to reach this point.
Yeah.
Wow.
At a certain point, they have to recycle. Now, maybe they had a bunch of those suits because they thought, okay, we're going to go out and test the world occasionally, but still, it seems like a lot. All right, now the number two deeply dumb catfish question is, how can Juliette even see outside when she goes outside?
Wonderful
When I go to a movie and I'm inside for 2 hours, when I come out, I'm like, oh my God, I can't see. These people have basically evolved for hundreds of years in what is basically very low light inside this silo. How is she able to like go outside and not take like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 3 days to adjust to the light?
Right. Well, think about it, though. When she's outside, she's wearing the helmet with the visor. The visor, we know, can do two things, the see-through part of the helmet. We know that you can see through it, but we also know there's an AI level on top of it. There's an augmented reality level they can put on top of it. So perhaps that's, kind of the equivalent of a tinted lens she's looking through. How about that? How do you like that answer?
All right. I mean, I guess I can say that if it's able to project something fake, it could project something real. In other words, there's like a camera on the helmet and it filters it. So she's not actually made the whole thing as a screen. She's never looking through it. All right. I'll take that ridiculous answer to that dumb question.
Thank goodness. If you have a question, listeners, go down on the YouTube comments and let us know. You know who doesn't have any questions but provides answers? It's our musical expert, Matt Murdick. And he's going to be breaking down the audio sounds, the orchestral score of Silo Season 2 all season long. Let's go to Matt and his musical analysis.
Hey, welcome to a segment of Double A, that is Atli's Antics. We're looking at Atli Alverson's score for Silo. And in this first episode of Season 2, I thought one of the more interesting thematic things that happened was this use of a particular chord progression throughout with different things placed over the top of it. Sometimes a melody, sometimes just little flurrying strings, these kinds of things. But it was pretty much the same after we got past the opening credits. After you have all your drama with Juliette just getting into the place. The rest of it, her exploring, was surrounded by a bunch of chords. And again, different things happened with these chords throughout the rest of the course of the episode. But it was basically this chord progression. By the way, you can actually hear that track on the Season 2 official soundtrack. It's out now to buy or to stream, wherever you get your stuff normally. And it's the cut Mirror, Mirror. Just look for that cut. You'll hear that exact progression. Sounds creepy. Sounds like it's not really harmonically connected in many ways. And that's intentional. It's supposed to be like, this is a brand new environment. This is off-putting to Juliette, as it is to us as viewers. And it's also a little bit creepy. And one of the things that you do is you just place two chords together that don't really have anything to do with each other. It gives it a randomness. You never know what you're going to find in this particular silo. But the thing that is most interesting about it is the other psychological effect that it has by using what we call contrary motion, where the bottom notes move in one direction and the top notes move in the opposite direction. And you'll notice that each of these chords, that's pretty much what happens, with the exception of the last two chords. Everything moves in different directions. When one is going one way, the other one takes the opposite. We start off with this chord. The top note then moves up, while the bottom note moves down. Once again, the same thing happens. Then the opposite happens. The top note moves down, the bottom note moves up. And it's like that throughout most of those chords. There is an exception between the third to last and the second. And then everything returns for a big final of, again, contrary motion. One of the things that happens in the last two chords is they're the first times you really have any sense of a major chord going to another major chord. The rest of the time, there's variances between minor and major, which really help to throw you off. Well, why would Atli do something like this? Well, one of the things that contrary motion does is it creates a sense of space. This is a huge environment that Juliette has to figure out how to survive in now on her own. Now, naturally, all the silos are huge, but this one is unknown, and the minor and the mixture of random chords and the contrary motion all help to create that effect. So that's what Atli did to really add some atmosphere to this particular episode. This has been Matt.
That's exactly what I was going to say, but I decided not to say that earlier in the podcast, so Matt could have original thoughts. What do you think, Catfish?
Bubba, it is always like you to let others shine and step back.
All right, before we get to our book talk and spoiler talk, let's get to some of your feedback, listeners. The episode hasn't even been out 20 hours. It's been, so we don't have much feedback for episode 1. But we did put out on all our social media channels, hey, if you saw the first episode, what did you think? How do you feel that Silo is back? And a true double L loyal listener named Nicholas Fortuna, who's at Nicholas Fortuna on Twitter. He just sent us back a GIF of a baby yelling, "Yes!" They are excited. Silo is back, Catfish.
Love it. And Matthew Murdick of the above mentioned Matt Murdick's musical Analysis said, well, that was a double C.
Double C.
Yeah, claustrophobically creepy.
It was. It was a triple C.
Triple C.
Claustrophobically creepy corpses that she was stepping on there.
Now, Bubba, what I love is we cover many different podcasts.
We do.
And sometimes people cover us only because they're interested in a specific show or maybe just a specific person. That's got nothing to do with this next person who left us a comment whose handle is Rebecca Ferguson fan at Rebecca fan 14, who said, while I like seeing Juliette again, I felt the flashbacks were unnecessary. Completely disagree. Oh, no, that's right. Agree with you, Rebecca Ferguson fan. Love the opening contrasted by Juliette's discoveries. Juliette Nichols is a new MacGyver, LOL. Love
that
it.
Is perfect. Who would win in a battle, MacGyver or Juliette Nichols, Catfish?
Well, I think simply because his hair is more feathered, MacGyver.
Right. When he's falling, that feathering really kind of helps him land softly.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. Hey, we got a good bit of feedback from our buddy Heath, the actor, who's at Heath Actor on Twitter. They wrote, this first episode felt like The Last of Us meets The Walking Dead bridge episode. Heath said this episode was okay, very dark, and he wasn't a fan of the flashbacks. Ooh, that's our second person who's not you or I who said that. Heath said he's going to be watching and listening to the podcast. He says he's the person who comically said this episode needed a Wilson volleyball. Thank you so much, Heath.
Excellent. And Link Hogthrob at Matt's Test Lab says, the ping-ponging flashbacks aren't my favorite. There we go. That's another piling on. But they did add context.
Yes.
I need an episode of shrinking to offset the melancholy. Who's that crazy guy at the end? Steve Zahn? Now, I did a little sleuthing, Bubba.
Okay, let's hear it.
You can confirm this is the
It
only
is Steve Zahn. That's right.
It is. It's not. No. Is it?
At the end, yeah, that's Steve Zahn. Spoiler alert. That's the actor Steve Zahn.
All right, love it. So it is Steve Zahn and not anybody who I thought it was, who was only in this episode. So love it that it is Steve Zahn, and we'll see what happens.
Hey, we expect and we hope you can give us feedback on your thoughts on episode 1 and episode 2 at PHQ, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter, Facebook. Search for us, Double P Podcast HQ. And hey, we are going to do at the end of every podcast, we're going to have a very short spoiler book talk section. Now, this is broken up into two sections. The first part is not too spoilery because we don't want to spoil Catfish on upcoming events that may happen in the show that happen in the book. And then we have a second section that is all spoilers. If you're on YouTube, we remove this entirely and make it its own video separate from the main podcast feed. So if you don't want to hear any book talk at all, please join us next week, and you'll always hear from me, Bubba, at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM at Fit and Trim on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Twitter, all sorts of things. And you can tell me what you think if you don't want to listen to the book section. Catfish, how can people talk to you?
They can hit me up at Instagram and Blue Sky. I've a long time ago abandoned the monolith. That is extremely crazy. At G to the Man, GEETOTHEMAN, G to the Man.
And we'll talk to you on the next podcast, which is about season 2, episode 2, entitled Order. In Silo 18, shock and unrest take hold in the wake of Juliette doing what no one's done before.
And we'll talk to you next time on
The Cleaning.
That was beautiful.